Hello, what's up, everyone? Come on in. This is.
TaijhTV.
Let's get to it. No need for the chitty chatter today.
Throughout the campaign, I promised to renegotiate NAFTA, and today we have kept that promise. I'm thrilled to speak to the American people to share truly historic news for our nation. It's my great honor to announce that we have successfully completed negotiations on a brand new deal to terminate and replace NAFTA with an incredible new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement called USMCA. The agreement will govern nearly $1.2 trillion in trade, which makes it the biggest trade deal in the United States history.
Now, I show you a clip of that so you see how deep the ties are with the United States and Mexico. But it's all an illusion if you ask me. You see, Mexico has always been a nation that America has wanted. And no, this is not a Democrat problem. I know Joe Biden's in office, but this is not a Democratic problem. This is a United States issue. We have, for a couple presidents now, been laying the groundworks of pretty much taking over Mexico's infrastructure. Now, I know a couple episodes ago I talked about the agreement, the Amero, all that good shit with America. That will come. But you're seeing a transformation within the countries around the world that have been historically close to third world status. Under Donald Trump, the agreement is established. And under Joe Biden, the papers were signed. I also showed you this a couple shows ago. The United States, Canada, and Mexico have an agreement. That agreement involves military actions, policing of states, countries, trade, which is huge. And it also goes over the fundamentals and foundation of all three nations, Mexico, Canada, and the United States. So it's only right that the presidents of the United States go out of their way to make that a priority. Let's see the North American Summit 2023. So this is this year that was in Mexico. Let's see a little bit of what happened.
Mexico hosted the North American Summit with the leaders of the United States and Canada on Tuesday. Several issues of common interest were addressed by the three leaders. The most important among these was Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador urging U.S. President Joe Biden to press Congress for immigration reform. This move sought to help regularize the migratory.
Now, why would the Mexican president be pressing the United States president on immigration reform? Why does he want immigration reform? You see, the narrative that the mainstream media puts out for me and you is that the Mexicans want over here in the United States. They're just going over fences, under fences, tunnels, all this crazy shit. But that's not really the case in this situation. You see, Mexico has a gentrification problem, and it's primarily from the United States. If many of you don't know what gentrification is, I will play the video. Let me find it real quick. Here it is.
Perhaps you've heard the word gentrification mentioned in the news, in the industry you're working in, or maybe even in some political context. Well, gentrification is happening more and more in the world around us, so it's important to understand what people are talking about when they rattle off this word. Gentrification is the process of a low-income and sometimes crime-ridden urban area transforming into a more upscale and affluent area. Gentrification is usually initiated by affluent residents and businesses moving into an area that is accompanied by the renovation and reconstruction of buildings, parks, and other local amenities. It involves both economic and demographic change and a change in the overall mix.
Economic and demographic change. This is going to the poor neighborhoods, the poor countries. Remember what I said, the third world type of countries? Well, Mexico traditionally has been like that. Even though there's great roots in Mexico, Mexico, for the most part, has been a poor nation. And now you have a gentrification issue from the United States. Let's listen.
Full of trendy, well-off Mexicans. Lots of foreigners, many from the US, also enjoy this gentrified area full of late 19th and early 20th century mansions converted into fine dining establishments with million-dollar brunches. In fact, even unremarkable apartment buildings built in the last 60 years, like the one behind me here, are also being transformed into swanky businesses.
You see how they try to make this seem like a good thing? This was done in the black communities. This is why the black communities are all fucked up. But don't worry, gentrification will come again to those poor black communities. It's like they just move from the south to the north to the west, Midwest. They move. They make neighborhoods, communities, governments, countries. They make them poor so they can buy them cheap. Change their culture in the process. You see, in the 1950s, 60s, and even some of the 70s, the black family was nuclear. It was balance. Father, mother, children, school, sports. But once people started being laid off because the business was moving, the business, for the example I'm going to use Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan was a beautiful city with blooming business. But once those businesses closed, once manufacturing went somewhere else, Detroit became a cesspool of criminal activity, a corrupt city. Oh, and it's corrupt. And then what happened? Business started coming back. People started buying cheap. Now, Detroit's nowhere what it once was, but Detroit could have been better off if it just sustained itself. But it could not because business moved. The infrastructure changed. The black family, that powerful nucleus, changed when Detroit changed. People started selling drugs. People started adapting to their environments. And it gave the government more reach in their personal lives and their business lives, their professional ones. You see, Mexico, that's what you're under right now. You're under a form, I don't want to say attack. You're under a form of gentrification. And the United States is leading the way in Mexico. The trade agreement that we signed, and when I say we, I mean the United States, Mexico, and Canada, allows us to do so. This is why the president of Mexico wants to talk about crossing borders, immigration. See, people thought what Donald Trump was doing with the wall was to keep the illegals and drugs out. No, this benefited both the Americans and the Mexicans. You see a big-ass wall at the border, as an American, you're thinking twice about going to Mexico. All they feed you on the mainstream media is how dangerous Mexico is. No, this was to keep everyone put. That wall, that Trump wall down there at the border, was to keep everyone put. Nobody move a fucking muscle until we get shit figured out. Well, Trump's out of office, wall goes down, immigration policy seems to be a thing of the past for the United States. So you're having mass moves to Mexico. Mass moves to Mexico, not to the United States, to Mexico. The United States is huge. We could house every Mexican down there if we really wanted to in one state. We're huge here. Mexico is not as big as the United States. So we effectively, and when I say we, I say the United States, we effectively downgraded Mexico to third world status so we could do this right here.
For many, the dream of owning a home in San Diego is almost impossible to achieve, but more and more San Diegans are making that dream come true by heading south.
Yeah, they're buying across the border. That's where CBS 8's Rocio de la Fe takes us to uncover Tijuana's booming housing market.
With rising housing costs on the U.S. side, many Americans are...
Do you see? Remember when I said it seems like it moves around, and when I meant it, I meant the poor. Seems like they move around. This is all done by design. You make everything in America cheap or expensive. Everything in California ultra expensive. Naturally, you're going to go look for a new way of life. This is why people immigrated to the west of the United States when they were on the east. This is why Southerners moved up north. The way of life was better, cheaper, more practical for them to be there. It's the same thing happening with Mexico. We're going down there buying homes for cheap, pennies on the dollar. In my field, my industry in which I work, I want to say a good 20% of employees live in Mexico. They commute back and forth. They have a beautiful home down there, a lot of land down there. And this is white people, this is Mexican people, Asian people. The way of life seems more simpler in Mexico compared to the United States, where every day is chaos. But let's let her finish.
are taking advantage of Baja Mexico's affordable real estate market for many reasons.
These gorgeous and breathtaking views of the Pacific Ocean have been drawing Americans into Mexico for decades. Some see Baja Mexico as the perfect vacation spot, and others choose to retire here. But Americans are going across the border permanently too.
Mexico is one of the main places.
Again, they're selling you gentrification. It's a good thing. But this is when things get sticky when you're in partnerships with the United States. When Mexico decides to halt oil exports in 2023, that's this year. Let's take a listen.
Mexico will halt crude oil exports in 2023 as part of its plans to reach energy self-sufficiency. According to Mexico's state-owned producer, Pemex, it will reduce oil exports to 435,000 barrels a day in 2022 before completely phasing out exports the following year. Currently, Mexico exports about 1 million barrels every day. The measure is part of the Mexican government's plan to expand domestic production.
When you sign trade agreement with the United States and oil in the United States, which is not being produced by the United States, but by other nations such as Russia and all that shit. Once Russia gets in a war and we have to sanction them, we have to decouple from their oil. That's where Mexico comes in. That's where Canada comes in. Canada is full of oil. So is Mexico. But when Mexico steps out of their box and says, we're going to become more self-sufficient. Well, no. That's not the contract in which you signed. And you guys can look this up. It's on whitehouse.gov. It's not the contract the president of Mexico signed. They didn't sign to be self-sufficient. So now there's a fucking problem. We're going to go create a Black Swan event in Mexico because now they're not playing by the rules.
A Fox News alert, FBI ramping up efforts to bring home 4 Americans who were kidnapped by heavily armed men in Mexico on Friday. The abduction reportedly happened at an intersection just 3 blocks from the U.S.-Mexico border in the cartel-controlled city of Matamoros.
You hear the wording there, cartel-controlled. Cartel-controlled city. Not the Mexican city. No, the cartel-controlled. Oh, you don't want to sell me that fucking oil? Well, why did your cartel just kill 4 of my Americans?
Congressman Michael Waltz is co-sponsoring a bill that would allow the U.S. Army to help fight the cartels and joins us now. Congressman, thank you for being with us.
You see how they glanced over that as if it was not newsworthy to harp on. A Republican congressman drafted a bill to be put into law that the United States Army go fight at the border. That sounds like fucking war with a neighboring nation. America hasn't had one of those in quite some time. But that's exactly what I just heard her pass over like that information meant nothing.
Us. You know, I have to jump into this because as a former military member, you may be able to answer this question. Now you're in Congress. How would this work with the U.S. military and the Mexican government? Would Mexico push back on the U.S. military in this? How would that look?
Well, we have to realize that these cartels in Mexico have declared war on the United States.
Woo! I stopped it there for a reason. She glossly went over the fact that our government wants to send military to our border to fight the opposition, and they're saying the opposition are the cartels of Mexico who have great power there. If you ask me, they control their government there. So essentially, an American politician wants to go to war with Mexico. You see, normally they wouldn't care about Americans going to Mexico dying, getting slaughtered because they were down there in the ghettos. No, normally they wouldn't give a fuck about that. Matter of fact, I believe certain people believe in depopulation that have power. I don't know who those people are personally, but, you know, I'm just saying. I don't think they usually would care. But when you stop oil production for the United States and you signed on the fucking dotted line, now there's a fucking problem. Now there's a huge problem. How far can the United States government go to take out Mexican drug cartels? Let's listen to what he has to say.
We've been talking about doing something against the Mexican drug cartels regarding foreign terrorist organization designation.
You guys got to read that. You guys have to read that. Let me see if I can go back a little bit. You have to read what's on the screen. You have to read. What does it actually mean to officially call Mexican drug cartels terrorists? You see, now these politicians have gotten crafty. Now they're getting crafty. We have to designate them terrorists because you know why? We fight terrorism. That's in the contract that we signed as 3 nations coming together. We fight terrorism. Ooh, what happened the last time America went to go fight terrorism? I'll tell you. We're still fighting it. We were in Afghanistan 20 fucking years. That's what happened. Lindsey Graham calling the drug cartels a terroristic group, and we all know the drug cartels have a lot of control in the Mexican government. He's essentially calling the Mexican government terrorist. And we know what America does to terrorists. We know what Russia does to Nazis, and we know what Americans do to terrorists. The writing's on the wall. The writing's on the fucking wall.
About doing something against the Mexican drug cartels regarding foreign terrorist organization designation for a decade, since 2012. Senator Kennedy and I are going to join forces. We believe Democrats will be involved to label these organizations as foreign terrorist organizations under U.S. law.
Graham would go on to specifically call out 9 Mexican drug cartels.
Look at that list there. I'll just show you what I see. Number 1, the Sinaloa, Jalisco Gulf Cartel, Los Zetas, Northeast Cartel, Juarez Cartel, Tijuana Cartel, Beltran, Leyva. Now, these are all areas in which I showed you the video of gentrification. You see, the government loves drugs. They don't want to stop the drugs. It doesn't matter who your fucking president is. That is big business. But they need them, and when I say them, the United States politicians need the Mexican politicians to get a grasp of their fucking country, because it's now a destination spot for tourists that brings in money. It's rich with oil that America needs, and it also is rich with the drugs that in which Americans need. Come on. They're telling them your cartel is being too loud. Get it in check. And while you're getting it in check that oil at the front door of America. This is how far they'll go. This answers the question. I don't need to hear this man talk to understand the logic in our politicians. Label the cartels terroristic groups. It gives us authority to go over to another country and take it over. And install our own government, our own cartels. See, with any and every gentrification that happens, the criminal leadership, because remember, poor brings more crime. The criminal leadership, if they do not comply, they die or get imprisoned in America. Right now, you have people who have been running the streets of Compton for years, making millions of dollars that no one knows of because they work hand in hand with the government. They're the ones that create the crack. They're the ones that produce the heroin. And when I say produce it, I mean bringing it over for wherever it comes from, probably Mexico. But there are people within the shadows of our neighborhoods, our streets, who look just like us, who are worth a fortune because they keep the criminal element down enough to where no one bats an eye and police can hit their quotas and prisons can hit their quotas. See, this is a big, big game. Huge game. This is so big. The Mexican president is rejecting the U.S. labeling of terrorists in their countries. Let's take a listen.
Meantime, Mexico's president is slamming some Republican lawmakers who propose sending U.S. troops into Mexico to combat the cartels. He's even going as far as starting an information campaign telling Mexicans and Hispanics in the U.S. to not vote for Republicans if that plan was.
So the Mexican president already fucked up right there. What he just did is interfere in our election process. You don't speak on politics if you're a foreign politician. Now, you can talk about the citizens all you want. You can talk about the morale or morals of America all you want. But you cannot talk about the politicians. You cannot talk about the scumbag running the nation, who are probably just as corrupt as you are. You cannot talk about them because that's within your contract, Mexico. That's on the fine print. You didn't see it? Of course not. He didn't see it.
Was to move forward. Correspondent Evan Lambert live in D.C. for us. And Evan, this is adding strain to the U.S.'s relationship with Mexico.
Natasha, of course, and we wanted to take a closer look at the man running Mexico, a country dealing with cartels that can go toe-to-toe with the military, corruption, and a justice system where 95% of violent crimes go unpunished.
95% of violent crimes are going unpunished in Mexico. We need our military down there to stabilize their infrastructure. They're telling you the playbook. You see, one thing about these elites, these politicians, these people with power, they don't hide their agenda. They tell you. You just need to go reading, go looking it up.
As Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador blames the fentanyl crisis squarely on Americans, failing to mention the skyrocketing production of the deadly drug by cartels under his watch, News Nation wanted to know more about the politician.
You see how he phrased it, right? All the Mexican presidents said that's an American problem because it is. America is the biggest consumer of illicit drugs. It is an American problem. It's not wrong. He didn't tell you the full truth, but he's not wrong. He cares about his nation, and he knows as soon as America gets their greedy little hands on a piece of Mexico, it's over. There's no going back. He loves his country so much that he's actually trying to police his country now. He's bringing in his military. They're at war with the cartels. He's trying to clean it up because he knows as soon as those Americans get here, the culture of Mexico changes, just like the history of the Black American changed. This is why most Black Americans can't tell you anything before slavery. Is that what you want, Mexico? Do you want the Americans to come down there and take over? I wouldn't. Look what they do to their blacks here. Look what they do to their Mexicans here. Look what they do to their middle class here. This is what you want?
Over the past few years, Mexico's president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has greatly expanded the role of the country's armed forces. From building airports, hospitals, and railways to securing borders, Mexico's military has been handed control over dozens of public works that were previously managed by civilian agencies.
Never in the contemporary history of Mexico has the military had access to this amount of resources and civil functions.
Most recently, Mexico's armed forces were assigned to monitor air traffic and even given control of an airline. And now, with violence and forced disappearances in the country at record highs, Mexico's armed forces are taking a leading role in policing the country. While many criticize growing militarization in Mexico, President López Obrador insists the armed forces are the only ones capable of curbing violence.
You know, the armed forces are the only ones capable of saving your nation from the hands of America. It's like that speech Deion Sanders made when he first got to Colorado. We're coming. We're coming. We're coming. America's coming. They're coming hard, and the president knows it. The people of Mexico need to know it. The people of Mexico need to understand it. Grasp the reality of saving your nation, maintaining, preserving your culture. Let's listen to the fire come from the Mexican president. You see, I'm not bullshitting you. I'm telling you the truth. You just don't want to listen to me. You don't want to listen to anything if it's not your favorite influencer or your favorite late night talk show or your favorite news outlet. But I'm telling you right now, what I'm spitting, it's a reality. It's a fucking reality. Let's listen to this president.
Son otros tiempos. México tiene.
Let's see what he says. Let me turn the volume down a little bit. Oh man, it was kind of loud.
Y en el caso de que se requiera defender el territorio, defender nuestra soberanía, no debemos de olvidar que ya, como lo mencionó el almirante Ojeda, son otros tiempos. México tiene mucha autoridad moral, tiene el respaldo de la mayoría de las naciones.
He thinks he has the backing of half the world. BRICS nations, maybe? Maybe he does, maybe he does not. But I know this man loves his country. He loves his country so much that he's actually going against America's interest publicly. It's about time you guys down there understand that your leader loves your nation and you should want that. I would say he's a don't tread on me, America type of guy. And with all that being said, I want to thank you for tuning in. Mexico, preserve your culture, preserve your heritage. It's a beautiful one. You do not want America down there. I will catch you guys later. Have a good weekend. Good night.